and we'll take time and try to learn the language of the Rashash. That's really what I think is going on here. And let's see what he tells us. A lot of things, little things that we know already. And let's go down and let's take a look at this. It says now, this is the Hakdama. Okay, let's start with Pirat HaPartzuf in the Das of Rashash V'Sod Midasim. Now, once again, we're really trying to get together with the language that the Rashash use. It Nakdem B'Kitzer as say that his Chalkus HaPartzuf in the Das of Rashash Kafishi is Boyer B'Devar. Let's go to the next paragraph. Olam Maratzil Nechloch B'Klalis L'Chamisha Partzufim. And so we're going to see the drawing over here on page 7 in the big book. Really shows that idea of 5 parts of Keser, Kolov as parts of Erich Anpin, parts of Chochma, Kolov as parts of Abba V'Ima Eloyin, parts of Bina, Kolov as parts of Yasos as Vuna, parts of Zer Anpin, Kolov as parts of Zun, Hagadolim. So here's the first words is that we need to identify as Zun Hagadolim, or parts of Nuk, which is called Yaakov Varachel. So that, to me, that's use of the word of Yaakov Rachel and talking about the Nook is novel to me. I don't think that I necessarily thought that. I don't know what to think. So over we go, because we see it in lots of different ways. Hamshachas Partzufi in the Rancha Kolim L'Kar Partzuf. So he says, Kol Partzuf Mi Partzufi Atzilus. Every Partzuf Nechlach L'Chamisha Partzufim. So every Partzuf is 5. Gogon parts of Zer Anpin HaKlali Hatzilus call them the parts of Keser Chachma Bina Zer Anpin Hanikra Gam Chagat. So he points that out now that he also calls the parts of Zer Anpin Chagat, and then he also calls the Malchus Hanikra Gam Nai. So when you say Chagat Nai, he's really talking about Zer Anpin and Malchus. Upartsufi elo kuruyim partsufim hakolim de Zer Anpin. Called parts of mechamesha partsufim bakolim and niskar kolum me'achad aser partsufim kachbad chagat nehim. So each one of them, instead of 5, you can make them into 11 also. Hanikraim partsufim de ovi. So we want to look at partsufim de ovi. The vishahim malvishim zeh zechet b'shav, and why is because they cover each other, they wrap around each other, but they're all the same. Ba'ofen adalvashas hu shahapnimi mekulam hu parts of a keser. So all of malvish parts of a chochma, all of malvish parts of a bina, v'kein hala ad parts of a malchus akitzoni mekulam. And you have a drawing similar to this on page 7 in the Motzaehem, where you actually see the duplication of all of these, starting with, I guess, if you start on the right, it's the most outside part, and then you're moving, which is called Nefesh, and then you're moving to Ruach, and then you're moving to Shama and Chai and Yechida, but they're all the same if you're looking at them just as, I guess, going that direction. So he's saying that they all wrap each other. So Nefesh wraps Ruach, and Ruach wraps Neshama, like that. But if you look at them, and so he says up above, he doesn't count them as 11, he counts them as 10 because he leaves out Das here. So I guess you could count them lots of different ways, either way. So what you're looking at, though, when you look at each one of them individually, is you're looking at them. I think we lost. Oh, you still there? Okay, yeah. I'm sorry. I hear a little beep, and I think you're gone. You're looking at them in Orech. Right, so they have 2 different ways. The one is that they wrap each other equally, but in Orech, and this was, I really thought wasn't like this, where he saw that in the language that the Rashash is using, Abba is Abba V'Ima Eloyin, and Ima is Yisrael Sabat Tavuna. He has them as, they don't wrap each other in Orech. They're actually the same size. It's just like an extension, the way that he's showing us here in the picture, and then Zun down below wraps all of them with the gar which is Erich Anpin Megula. But you see here, he's about to explain that. It says that they do wrap each other with aspects of them which are megula. So let's go back to where we were now. Did I read all of that, or I forgot where I stopped. Kol echad na partzufim alalucha the ovi nechloch leechad aser spheres kachbad chagat nehem. So he says these are called nikros eser spheres the orech. So we're looking at the spheres of orech. He has them as partzufim. So he really has Erich Anpin, Abba ve'ima, and Zun. Zun is 2, so that makes 5. So he said Avada. He says. The af kashemitzayram as a sphere is the orach mitzayram mosach bezeh tachazeh. So there you have a different way of looking at it. B'kol makom anachom hu shehem malvishim zeh ezeh. The machba shehem lo malvishim as zeh b'shava. But the thing is, they do clothe each other. He says it better. He says that, but they don't do it equally. Ela the chachma the orach malvishim the kesed the orach. The garland shalo, so it only goes to a certain level of what's on top of it. But the loka partsufim the ovi, it's not like the partsufim of ovi, and try to understand that. Malvishim zeh zeh b'shava l'chein metzarim osachim keilu heim zeh tachazeh shenika rak hachedek hamagula shall call sfera. So we're only talking about the part that's revealed, not the part that's covered over. Now, the reason why I wanted to do this is because, like on the next page, we're going to get into this drawing that he has to give us the 11 by 11, which is 121 different combinations that you can have, or apparently that you have if you use this system. That will give you the combinations of different letters. So I wanted to see, well, why do we need to know this? I mean, why do we have to have, he's about to get into this Chabad Chatam and all the different combinations. Why do we need to know the Orech and we need to know the Ovi? Why does everything go like that? Because that is what it is. Because apparently the partsufim themselves go in 2 different ways. They wrap each other, but at the same time, individually looking at them, they have parts which are even though they're equal from one to the next, and that's going widthwise, but in lengthwise they're not equal. So now let's go. The nimsa im kain. I guess we're up at the top of the page here. So he says the nimsa im kain. Shekol echem mechapartzufim the atzilus kolam mechamesha partzufim kololim. So we'll call this, say that each one of the partzufim has 5 within it. And echlochim kol echad liyud aleph partzufim ba'ovi. Shekol echad kolam yud aleph spheres the orech. So in our drawing, and we'll look at it down below. We'll go to the drawing. And the drawing shows the 5 partzufim across the top, parts of Keser, Chochma, Bina, Chagat, and Nai. So he says that these are all of them are kolel to Zah. In other words, we're talking about what's coming into Zah, what Zah is made up of. So it's a little bit not like this world, obviously. So he has across the top, he says, a partzufim de Ovi, and each one of them is going to have a Keser, Chochma, Bina, Das, all the way down to Malchus. And then on the side, he has written partzufim de Orech. So you have these two, which are also Keser, Chochma, Bina, Das, and then all the way down to Malchus. You have all of that. So in this drawing, he has just the left side darkened, because he wants to say that left side, he says, is already in Zeir Anpin. Zeir Anpin is already constructed. What we need to bring in is all the rest of the 121 different aspects that you could do. Now that's what this drawing says. And that's a basic idea of the partzufim of Kololim. And we'll see a little bit more how the Chabad Chatam works. So he says, let's go back up to the reading and let's read again. He says, Hamshachas Amochim. Now, of course, there are things here that we know already, but try to putting his language together. So I think, to me, the general idea of Keser, of the partzufim in Ovi and the partzufim of Orech is not such an easy idea to try to figure out. It's like, from this world, what are we talking about here? But this is what he says is the nature of Atzilus. So he says, Kol of them, v'hinech Shlomo's called parts of Kukashayesh lo as kol hamochim shalo. So then all of these would come in, would be the shlemus of the entire parts of him. V'lokol chelek b'menu yesh chelek mochim v'shayach alav. So every single portion has mochim that go into it. I guess that's what he says. So what am I looking at here? I'm looking at a parts of, which is a system which is prepared for fractioning, what's the right word, of the light, refracting the light. So, but each one of them has a widthwise, and each one of them has, and we've seen the drawing, we know what it's talking about, has a lengthwise. And each one of them has a moach, that's the part here, that's going to go into it. Hamochin the nefesh, the mochin the parts of a nai, a kolel. So the nefesh goes with the concept of the parts of nai. Now previously he said in the Rishash that this refers to malchus, but I'm not sure how to fit it. Hamochin the ruach, hamochin the parts of a chagat. So these are the words that he's using, are now called the ruach goes with the parts of kol chagat, which previously he said is Erich Anpin. Hamochin the neshama, the parts of a bina, but these are the languages. These are hamochin the chaya, the parts of a chachma, but hamochin the yechida, parts of a keser. So you could put those all together. V'hidim et echidas atziluso mesukin zer anpin kavar b'shnei partzufim nai chagat. That's what we have down below, that we're in the dark. They're already mesukin. So he says, let me see where I lost my place. The Haino, Masukin, Chagat, Bakoladim, Shalom, I lost my place. So he said, okay, so he said, V'chagat, the Koladim, Shalom, the Haino, Sheyesh Lechem, as HaMochim, Shalachem, Shehim, Nefesh, and Ruach, they already have all of their Mochin in them. Now what Avo the Seder B'Shesh Al V'Shanin, so this is the status of the world. The world is in Katnas, it's a world of Vok. So he says, or Zun, maybe that's the right way to say it, I don't know. So he said, Alfi Shanin, in this 6,000 years, our job, who's l'hashlim v'desakin v'shloshes parzufi kacha v'kolden v'zer anpin, that's what we need to do. The hamshek lachem is the mochim shalachem, in order to bring the mochim. So what is the mochim anyway? The mochim of the Jews. So he's making it sound like the parzufim are empty, or something like that, or they need an energy source. And this is the energy source. The hamshek lachem is the mochim shalachem, so each one of them has its own individual energy source. Ve'im ha-mochim, the neshama, the parts of a bina, so this is what you're missing. Chaya, the parts of a chokhmah, and yechida, the parts of a keser. We're trying to make a shlama to the whole idea. So hamochim, go down below, hamochin on nimshachin is parts of elyonim, makbilin b'kinozin the osa b'chinas parts. So this is Rabbi Mimran saying that they have the same addresses. One address goes to the next address. You could also say it in a different way. You could say that the DNA follows the same pattern. It goes to the matching DNA. As you're going downwards, the Haino, the parts of Bina, Hakol of the Zer Anpin. Now looking at Zer Anpin, he has a parts of which is called Bina. Nimshachim Mochim Partsufi Yasos, that's going to come from the similar Partsufim, which is Yaso, which is in Birina's Bina. The Klaus Atzilos, which is the Bina, is going to go into the Bina of Zer Anpin. So this is the concept of bringing a neshama into Zer Anpin, which are what? Mochim that are coming from Yasos. The parts of Chochmah, Hakol, the Zer Anpin. Now when Mochim come from the parts of Chochmah, Nemshachim Mochim, the parts of Abba ve'Imach loins, and you have Mochim which are coming from a higher source. Shechim be'Bechinas Chochmah HaKlalis, the Atzilus, which is the concept of the, I guess you'd say the Chochmah V'Tzilus. They're called by the name Chaya. So these are Mochin the Chaya, we have Mochin the Neshama, we have Mochin which already existed of Ruach and Nefesh. But here are the Mochim that are coming in new. And they're Bechinas Chaya, Nikruch b'Mochin the Abba of the Imre Loin. But the parts of Keser HaKol, the Zer Anpin, Nemshachim, Mochin, the parts of Erich, Shuvah Bechinas Keser, the Klavus Atzilus, B'Mochin HaLudoch, Bechinas Yechida, they're called by that name, a Nikra Mochin, the Erich, the Mochin, the Erich are called Yechida. Now he goes on and he says like this, he says, Mochin Nimshachim Mekol Kumas Mochim Heim Kafulim. That's another part that we have to have in mind. It's a small idea, but he says is that mochin de dacher and mochin de nok. Each one of them have male and female mochin. So now we're just looking at the mochin. Doesn't hear the word mochin. Mochin is really part of the, if I'm not mistaken, of the concept called soma, which he's going to talk about, I think, here. He says, Kagon ha-mochin de neshama nimshach the parts of a bina. So, for example, the mochin and the neshama are going to go into the parts of a bina. Kulula mishnei bechinas mochim, and it has two different kinds of mochim in it. This is what he wants to say. He says it had mochin de Yisrael Saba, because that's the bina that we're talking about that's attached to Iyar Anpin. Mochin de Tavuna, and also the mochim of Tavuna. So which is the female. And mochim de Chaya and Nimshach and the parts of a Chochma, then you have mochim de Chaya goes specifically, they have the DNA that takes them specifically to Chochma. Kululim b'mocha de Abba. It also has a male and a female aspect. Mochim de Ima, also for the mochim de Ima. Mochim de Yechida and Nimshach and the parts of a Keser. They go to the parts of a kasser, so this is mochim of the highest possible level. And we learned, like Narantchi, or this word Narantchi, which is nefesh, ruach, neshama, chay, yechida, I learned that is the oros part of the cold soma. Here he's just saying, just cold soma is one entity with different, I guess, gradations of light in it. So when you're coming from kasser, you're going to get this yechida. Kululim mochen de erich, mochen de not erich. So all of this always has a male-female component. So now he says mochen de gadlus and mochen de kadna. So here's another thing we have to know. Not only do you have the mochen that are male and female, but now let's talk about more about the mochen. The mochen called echa mishloshas vechidas and mochen, which are also called nachi, neshama chay yechida. Kolum chamesha bechinas the rantchi pratios, the rantchi the neshama, the rantchi the chaya, the rantchi the yechida. All of them have their own panoply of lights. So they all have a nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. So he said bechinas the nefesh, ruach, nefesh, ruach pratios nekroim mochin the katnas. So he says the mochin. So that's what we already know. He says that the mochin of I guess it's to keep this in mind. During Sifra in general, you're dealing with katnas. So he says the chay and the rantchi the chida are those mochim bechinas and nefesh ruach apratius they crime mochin the katnas. So when you look at the whole group from a nefesh to yechida, the lower two, which is ruach and nefesh and ruach, are called katnas. Bechinas the shamachai yechida apratius, which is specifically them, they crime mochin the gadlus. Those are called mochin the gadlus. And mochin the katnas v'gadlos the neshama. So now let's look at neshama. So this is one of them. That's the bina that's coming in. Nekroim katnas v'gadlos rishon. So if they're coming from Yisrael Saba Tavuna into Iyar Anpin, they're into and particularly he said previously that's going to the bina of Iyar Anpin. It's going to be called katnas v'gadlos rishon because that's where it's coming from. It's coming from from neshama, and we're talking about what's coming from neshama is we're talking about the vok that's coming from neshama. We're talking about the gar that's coming from neshama. Amochin the katnas v'gadlos the chaya nekroim katnas v'gadlos sheni. They're called katnas v'gadlos sheni. V'amochin the katnas v'gadlos the yechida nekroim katnas v'gadlos shlishi. So we said once again the katnas is coming from the vok because the vok is the ruach neshama part, and the chay yechida, the neshama chay yechida, the nechi part is going to be called the gadlos. So he's got something on that. Should be I don't know what's going on over there exactly. Now we're coming over here to this drawing, and we have to take a look at what we're actually dealing with. Again, in the drawing, the left side of the drawing is Mesukanim Mitachilas Atzilus, and they're already that when Iyar Anpin is born out. All of these mochin are in all of these partsufim, or we call these spheros. The 11 spheros, all of the mochin are in them. The problem is that the other three do not have. And here we're going into sphera, and which parts of the sphera are we really dealing with? So he says, just reading across the top, we'll go to the very top. Let's not do the very top yet. It says, Partsuf and Makolim Dazer Anpin are Keser, Chochma, reading across, and Bina, because that's what we're dealing with here now. So we see that there are no darkened spaces in Keser at all. And at the very top, he says, Nisakim Beleil Chag HaShavuot. So this is, I know we know this, but on Shavuos, the whole concept, the whole parts of all 121 pieces are Musukin on the night of Shavuos. Then we go over to the next part. But what we're dealing with now in Sifra is only two partsufim. It's the partsufim of Bina, Chochma, and the partsufim of Bina. Let's read the top. He says, Chagtam, and what we're going to be looking at is the Chabad Chagtam, the Chabad Chagtam, the Ovi. So he says, I left out the word Orech. He says, the Chabad Chagtam, the Orech. And so you could see, like, so it's talk in the right corner, we're in the Bina one, or the Chachma one, rather. And you see that this is Ovi. Going across the top is going to be Keser Chachma down to Malchus. Then Orech would be taking that same Mahalach. You start with it's lighter print here because the Keser part is not Mesukin. And then you're going to go to Chachma, and you're going to see in Chachma, just read the letters, it's Chagad, Chabad, Chag, Ta, and then you skip, and the Mem is at the bottom. That's what's Mesukin during each one of these times. And if you're dealing with the Chachma, say for example, that's Chachma. Chachma is going to have a Chachma in all of the Chabad Chagtam. Again, going widthwise, Chabad, Chag, Chagat, and then the Mem. So that's what you see is all of this is what's going to be dealt with in one time that we're going to Chachma. We're going to be dealing with the entire panoply of the Chabad Chagtam in Orach. So let's see what he says now. So how do these mochim flow? So we learn like this, the bimei hasvira na'asis hamshocha the sfiras Chabad Chagtam the Orach. So this the Shara Kavanos tells us this, that all we're building up here is those two, because Keser and the Nai are not Musukan until the night of Shavuos. The call Echem Maputze Chabad Chagtam the Ovi, the Shnei Partzufi Chochma Bebina Chakom the Zah. So here is our Chochma, here is our Bina, and that's where the action is taking place. So he says, the Seder Hamshacha B'Katzarachu, so the way they flow is like this. Shepakol Shavua Nimshach and Amochin, the parts of Echad the Orech. So every week we have one of the partsufim of Orech. So he says, Shekol Sheves Partzufi Chabad Chagtam the Ovi. So each one the Orech. So we have, for example, on the first day, we have the Chesed, Chochma will be dealing with Chochma in each one of the partsufim of Ovi, which are going to be equal as we saw in the original drawing. And it's going to be each one of the Chochma in each one of those Chabad Chagtam to Ovi. I think that might be the end of the shir today. We'll see, because we're really at the time limit, and I believe that's it.